Street Books and Harper Audio present Fahrenheit-182, a memoir by Mark Hoppus and Dan Ozzie. Read by Mark Hoppus. This is the author. To Sky and Jack. This is what happens when people stop being polite and start running down the street naked. 1. Name. This one's easy. I click my pen open and write on the line, Mark Hoppus. Date. Another easy one, October 2nd, 1980. Grade. Third. 3. Third. Then the real test questions start. They're much harder. They want to know how many times 910 can be divided by 5. They ask what 11 times 4 is. All kinds of math stuff. Equations, quotients, remainders. Too easy. I got this. I hunch over my desk, deep in thought about long division and multiplication tables. That's when I feel the rumble. My desk starts to shake and rolling thunder roars toward the school. A shadow flashes. Suddenly, a sonic boom explodes just above our classroom. Bam! It's so loud, the windows rattle in their frames. It feels like the sky is crashing down, like the universe itself is collapsing. But most of the other students don't even bother looking up from their tests. A Navy fighter jet disappears into the distance, shaking everything in its path. This happens every day here. This is where I grew up, Ridgecrest, California, a small town in the middle of the Mojave Desert. The only reason a town even exists in this barren landscape is the large, adjacent military base. 1 million acres of creosote and nothingness, where the Navy develops and tests their missiles, rockets, and bombs. It's where my father has worked since I was born. Living near a test range made military presence a part of my everyday life. Fighter jets zoomed over my school regularly. Most of my friends' parents worked on the base. When I was in 2nd grade, a Navy pilot named Ted Fowler flew by in a QF-86 Sabre, whose engine failed immediately after takeoff. Rather than eject and risk the abandoned jet plowing into the kids on the playground or destroying the school, he steered his doomed aircraft to an empty field 600 yards away, where it crashed and burned. He burned with it, caught in his harness, while rescuers and helpless onlookers watched in horror. His fatal flight brought the entire town to a standstill. The spared school was renamed in his honor. Ridgecrest is built on wind and dirt. When I rode my bike home from school, I had to pedal hard against the intense gusts. Sand blew in my face and got stuck in my teeth. Sand blew so hard, it blasted the paint off mailboxes, stripping them down to bare metal. People laid heavy tires on the aluminum roofs of their trailers to keep them from clanging all night or disappearing altogether. We chased dust devils in the schoolyard. Actual tumbleweeds blew down the streets. It was windy, you get the idea. And then there was the heat. Summers were brutal. The old gag is, yeah, but it's a dry heat. But 120 degrees is no joke. The sun beat down mercilessly on everything. It bleached the color off plastic toys left outside. It bleached the color off entire houses. Most buildings became faded snapshots of their original selves. Parked cars had their dashboards warped and cracked by the extreme rays. Their vinyl upholstery roasted your thighs, and the seatbelt buckles scalded your hands. And the metal slides at playgrounds? Oh my God, your legs would sizzle like a McDonald's grill, back when they had grills. There was a single McDonald's in Ridgecrest, and it was the only fast food place in town. My family lived in a double-wide trailer in the middle of the dirt, and it wasn't much safer in there. Even with a swamp cooler, it got so hot that the water evaporated out of the toilets. Sometimes the door handles inside the house were too hot to touch. We went away one weekend and returned home to find that all of our candles had melted, their wax hanging from the shelves like suspended waterfalls. It's too hot for most living things to survive in Ridgecrest. Every spring, a few naive neighbors planted green lawns and shrubbery. The fools. Their plants and dreams flourished and bloomed for a few optimistic weeks. Then the summer came and scorched everything from the earth. Grass turned brown, flowers wilted and died. Any life that could take hold was ruthless and hostile. Rattlesnakes hid under rocks. Black widow spiders lurked on lawn furniture and bike seats. Sometimes I'd run inside, shouting, "Mom, Mom, guess what? I found a crab." She'd rush out and shoo away the scorpion I'd been playing with. Then, in the winter, everything froze. To survive in the desert is a 1 in a million shot. In this environment, nothing grows, nothing lasts, nothing makes it out or thrives. But somehow, I did. 1 in a million happens to me all the time. 2. I grew up a happy kid in a happy family. After a few years of sweating it out in our desert trailer, my dad saved up $33,000, enough to buy a modest house on the edge of town. When I say the edge of town, I mean there was one house behind us and then nothing. Miles and miles of nothing. But it was a nice little home on a street full of other homes that looked just like it. Leave it to Beaver in Death Valley. My dad was literally a rocket scientist, an aerospace engineer who spent his career designing missiles and bombs for the Navy. He devoted many years to HARM, a high-speed anti-radiation missile designed to take out enemy radar. Sometimes the news would show footage of an American aircraft, and my dad would pause mid-bite, point, and say, "I worked on that." Other times he couldn't talk about what he was working on at all. He had to testify before Congress and secret committees. The man was a scientist through and through, organized and precise in everything he did. As a young engineer, he wore giant Coke bottle eyeglasses and neatly pressed collared shirts that he tucked into his pants. He saw the world through the lens of data and schedules, careful planning and meticulous hard work. If there was one piece of advice he hammered into me, it was, "Mark, time management is the key to success." He never liked me sleeping in and instilled in me a fear of being late that I still possess. I'm never late. As a kid, I enjoyed spending time with my dad, even just tagging along for mundane chores. On Saturdays, we drove our trash to the dump in his truck, speeding down a long, bumpy road. We called it the Yeehaw Road because you had to dip through a dry gulch that left your stomach hanging in midair. We'd hit the drop and scream, "Yeehaw!" He blasted the stereo and we sang along to Don McLean's American Pie the whole way. The sun beat down on us and dust trailed behind. He told the worst dad jokes and stuck faithfully to the same cringy bits for years. The man needed new material. Every time we went to a restaurant, he called the server over to say, "Uh-oh, looks like I need a new menu. This one's printed upside down." The harder people groaned, the more he leaned into it. To this day, every holiday season, he sets out a small branch with a rifle shell casing on it and asks people if they know what it is. A cartridge in a bare tree. My dad's sense of humor was what won my mom over when they first met in high school. He asked her out on a tennis date and made her laugh. They started playing all the time and soon became inseparable. They cruised the orange groves lining the idyllic Southern California suburbs in convertible American cars, Beach Boys on the radio. They fell in love. Gross. My mom was all love and support and patience, big on hugs and quick to tears, but with the fire and determination of a suffragette. Whenever there was a school parade, Cub Scout meeting, or charity event, she would be the one sewing costumes and baking cookies. There was no mom duty she couldn't handle. She made up games for us to play and got down on the kitchen floor to play them. She read me books and we watched Captain Kangaroo. She took me to run errands at the bank and grocery store and taught me how to cook. By the time I was 4, I could cook my own scrambled eggs. We hiked and camped and backpacked. She encouraged me to explore the world. Whenever I had a budding interest in a new endeavor, like my shameful month of close-up magic, she supported me to the fullest. My mom let me take mental health days off from school while my dad shook his head. When I was 5, my sister Anne was born. 5 years is a fairly big gap between siblings, but there was never a distance between us. From day one, I felt close to Anne. She was my sister and friend. I built us forts in the house, and we would hole up in them for hours. I walked her to school to make sure she got there safely. I read to her. On the hottest days, we put our bathing suits on and ran through the sprinkler in the front yard. Our grandma gave us a tape recorder that Anne and I used to make our own radio shows, complete with original songs. We spent summers 90 minutes south in Riverside with Nana, my mom's mom. My parents dropped Ann and me off when the school year ended, and for the next few weeks, we swam in Nana's pool, eating turkey sandwiches and Doritos with wet fingers in the California sun, listening to pop hits like Tainted Love and Call Me on the mighty 690 AM radio. Nana took us to play miniature golf and gave us money for video games. She bought us as many books as we could read. Over the summers, I went through all the Paddington Bear, Encyclopedia Brown, and Choose Your Own Adventure series. Nana also gave me what is, without a doubt, the best Christmas present I ever received. An Atari 2600 video game console along with a Space Invaders cartridge. Fuck yeah. We also spent a lot of time at my dad's parents' house. Mama and Papa were more formal than Nana. Their belongings more precious, their house a little colder, but they loved us no less. Mama made me peanut butter and mint jelly sandwiches on buttered white bread. She had a great, loud laugh, and her car smelled like perfume and ashtrays. I remember Papa as quiet and gray, always in a freshly pressed cardigan, falling asleep upright on the couch, snoring loudly. He had a wood shop in the garage where he built me and Ann toys and furniture. Easter was their big holiday, and they devised elaborate egg hunts for us to solve. We spent birthdays and special occasions at Disneyland. I love Disneyland. They don't call it the happiest place on earth because it sucks. Going there was sort of a family tradition. My mom has a photo of herself there as a young girl in 1955, the year the park opened. Ridgecrest was home to a weird mix of people. The Navy base drew the brightest minds in science and aeronautics, the most talented fighter pilots and their families. But the influx of personnel was greeted with leery skepticism by the locals, who didn't seem to appreciate these strangers invading their wasteland anonymity. It bred an odd combination of geniuses, desert rats, doomsday conspiracists, and meth heads. I believe at one point Ridgecrest was the methamphetamine capital of the United States. It may have just been California, but I like to dream big. I had a lot of friends in the neighborhood. We were Generation X. Our parents left us to play on our own. We skinned our knees, drank from the hose, and ghost rode our bikes directly into the curb. We risked life and limb playing with X-Acto knives, wood-burning kits, and chemistry sets. When I was just a toddler, my dad gave me a piece of wood, some nails, and a hammer, and told me to go nuts. I knocked so many nails into that thing it looked like a porcupine. That was my favorite toy. A lot of my friends and classmates were also military brats, so there was a good deal of turnover. You'd get close with someone, and then one day their family would move away, and you never saw them again. I got good grades and stayed out of trouble. I was never late. My homework was always impeccable, except for the time I got detention for changing the lyrics in the Christmas play to Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. But if I behaved well, Santa brought me new Star Wars toys for Christmas. When The Empire Strikes Back hit theaters, it completely consumed all of us. We collected the action figures and spacecrafts and reenacted scenes from the movie in the schoolyard. I was always jealous of my friend Jeff. His parents bought him all the Star Wars toys he wanted, and he could ruin them with impunity. I'd chase him and his TIE fighter around his backyard with my X-Wing and yell out, "You've been hit!" He'd make an exploding sound and throw his TIE fighter at the ground as hard as he could, smashing it to 1,000 pieces. And his parents would just buy him a new one. My parents didn't have enough money for replacement TIE fighters, so I learned to value what I had. Ridgecrest didn't have much to offer aside from dirt and open space, but my friends and I made it work. We built elaborate BMX courses and spent afternoons jumping the mounds. It didn't always have to be that complex, though. Sometimes we just had dirt clod fights where all you had to do was reach down, pick up a lump or sometimes a rock, and hurl it at your friend before they could get you. The world was wide open and no one was watching. There were no playdates back then. We took off on our bikes in the morning to explore the desert with instructions to be home when the streetlights came on. We caught lizards and horny toads out in the great nothing and brought them back to examine in our bathtubs. Occasionally, we'd stumble upon abandoned mining camps with rotting piles of empty cans and broken bottles. Some of the camps contained abandoned mine shafts. Every year, hapless off-road motorcyclists disappeared into forgotten excavations. We made sure to walk around those. One day, my buddies and I were rummaging through a heap of discarded trash when we flipped over a sheet of plywood to see what was underneath. Staring back at us was a stack of porno magazines. We had no idea what we were looking at. When I got home, I told my parents we had discovered pictures of naked ladies exercising. My parents were pretty loose about what I watched and listened to, often even sharing their interests with me. They had great taste in music. Our living room cabinet held a turntable and a big stack of records. I used to lie on the thick shag carpet for hours, listening to albums by the Beatles, Neil Diamond, Diana Ross, John Denver, and Michael Jackson. I can say that, right? Elton John and Simon and Garfunkel. Stevie Wonder, Olivia Newton-John and the Bee Gees. Donna Summer, Barry Manilow, and Kenny Rogers. My favorite songs were the ones that got stuck in your head. The ones you couldn't help but sing along to, even when you weren't listening to them. The ones you could hear over and over again without getting sick of. I liked lyrics that made you think in a new way or told a cool story. The more I listened, the more I spent time thinking about what the singers were trying to say. Joy and heartbreak. And it made you want to sing and wonder, what would it be like to live in a yellow submarine? There were also a number of comedy records in our collection. I grew up on Richard Pryor, George Carlin, and Bill Cosby. I can say that, right? I listened to their routines and laughed until my face hurt. I especially loved Carlin and Pryor because they weren't just telling funny stories. There was something more going on. They cursed and paced and told their truth. I could tell there was meaning behind the jokes, which were razor sharp and delivered with beat-by-beat timing, down to the word. Carlin had his famous 7 words you can never say on television bit, which I gleefully committed to memory. Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. I recited them to anyone who'd listen, and plenty who wouldn't. That stack of records laid the foundation for my love of both music and comedy. The albums also soundtrack the earliest memories I have of my family. We put them on while my mom made dinner. We sang and laughed together. We were a regular, nuclear American family, and everything felt nice and safe in our suburban home. Then in 3rd grade, everything fell apart. 3. It started behind closed doors. My parents locked themselves in their bedroom. From the hallway, I could hear their voices. Hushed murmurs grew to sharp, insistent tones, then full-on yelling. This went on for hours. What the hell was going on in there? I crept up to the door to listen, but I could never make out what they were saying. All I heard was anger and hurt, returned with hurt and anger. It seemed like it was happening more and more often. Something felt wrong. One afternoon, they were going at it in an impressively spiteful manner. I sat in the hallway outside their room, listening to the usual cacophony. The ebb and flow of a couple's fight, tears and accusations. I was just settling in for another round of, holy shit, is this really happening? When I accidentally let out a tiny cough, and the yelling abruptly stopped. Oh, fuck. Silence. I stopped breathing. Okay. Maybe they didn't hear me. Cool. Exhale. Then, footsteps, fast approaching the door. Oh, fuck. I got up to run. Just a quick sprint from the hallway to the safety of my bedroom, where I could dive under the covers and pretend I'd been there the whole time. What, that noise? Oh, that couldn't have been me. I've been here quietly napping the whole time. Everyone's favorite little obedient child. But my foot kicked something as I turned. My cup of apple juice. It spilled everywhere. On the walls, on the floor. The door flew open as the juice soaked darkly into the carpet. That same shag carpet I laid on and listened to records when life was normal. It had betrayed me. I was caught. My parents made sure Anne and I knew their fighting wasn't our fault, but it was still confusing. Too much for this 8-year-old to process anyway. I stayed up nights wondering how to make it stop, what I could do to make them get along again. Parent trap schemes. Hey, Dad, isn't this dinner delicious? Wow, really amazing cooking, Mom. Great job. What do you guys want to watch on TV tonight? I vote for MASH. Let's see what that pervert Radar is up to. Nothing. The fights continued and morale did not improve. My parents finally told us they needed some time apart to figure things out. My dad moved into a depressing bachelor's apartment. It had a beanbag chair and some black leather furniture, and no matter how many lights you turned on, it was always dark. He didn't hang anything on the walls. There were no toys. It felt foreign and wrong. Anne and I only went there a couple of times, and we weren't allowed to spend the night. Dad and I still drove to the dump occasionally, but it wasn't the same. We didn't sing songs anymore or shout yee-haw when we hit the bumps. It was quiet. Somber. I learned that quiet means disquiet. Quiet means yelling is on the way. Stop the quiet before it starts. I stopped paying attention in school and completely lost the ability to focus. I spent the hours sitting at my desk, lost in space, watching the hands move slowly around the clock on the wall. I didn't hear or see anything going on around me. One day, our teacher played us an educational film strip. Afterwards, she called on me to answer a question, but my mind was completely blank. What? I realized that not only did I have no clue what the answer was, I didn't even know the subject of what we'd just been watching for 30 minutes. She kept me after class and sat me down. "What's going on, Mark? You used to be such a good student, but lately you're not participating. Talk to me." I didn't know what to say, too embarrassed and adrift to tell her the truth. She called my parents in for a meeting and told them I seemed checked out. I wasn't just checked out in the classroom. I didn't want to hang out with anybody. I wanted to be alone. I felt like my friends treated me differently, like an outsider. Kids can smell blood in the water, and once the marauding schoolyard bullies could tell that I was hurting, they turned their attention my way. In the schoolyard one afternoon, I found myself surrounded by a group of kids chanting, "Fight! Fight! Fight!" One of the bullies kept pushing me around, shoving me, trying to get me mad enough to fight. But I wasn't mad, and I didn't want to fight. I just stared at the dirt. A few unreturned swings and a little blood later, and a teacher broke it up. The crowd dispersed, and there I was, the saddest, loneliest kid this sad, lonely world has ever seen. A violin wept. My parents sent me to talk to a therapist. I didn't understand why I had to sit in an office and tell a stranger about my feelings. Feelings? This was 1980. As far as anyone knew, kids didn't have feelings. It seemed like everyone's parents were getting divorced, and the kids just had to deal with it as best we could. The closest most of us got to real guidance were after-school specials. How do I feel? I feel sad. I feel like I don't know how to not feel sad. That's how I feel. What was I supposed to get out of seeing a therapist anyway? I went there once a week and never really figured it out. I moped and shrugged through questions about my family and my emotions. I don't know. Maybe? I guess. Sure. I don't know if the sessions helped, but at the end of it, the therapist gave me a book and told me to think about the story inside. The story followed a kid who lost their beloved teddy bear. The child was distraught. They looked everywhere. Despite their best efforts and fruitless searches, they never got it back. Never found it. The bear was gone. The moral of the story was, sometimes you have to let go. I'm pretty sure it was the book they were supposed to give the kids whose parents died, but I went with it. But it wasn't all sad bears. There was still hope. My parents reassured us that they were just separating for a while, taking some time apart to work things out. Nothing was ending. Nothing was permanent. They were simply on a break. Oh, thank God. That makes so much sense. Time apart. Break. Everything's going to be cool. It'll just take a minute. Got it. But then my parents started dating other people, and that hope vanished again. I spent weekends with my dad and his new girlfriend at her house. She was nice enough and treated me like a cool teenager. She was young and vibrant and drove a sports car with an 8-track player that always had Journey's Escape sticking out of it. One time she put me in the passenger seat, opened up the T-top, turned on the music, and we sang along on a drive to the roller skating rink. She was a hot, red-headed rock and roll babe. She was also my dad's secretary. So there it was, the reason for the racket behind the closed doors. My mom was crushed and furious. To support us, she took a job on the base, coordinating moves for the servicemen and their families into and out of the area. It was a dreary underground office with only one window. In a cruel twist of fate, her desk looked directly onto the parking lot where every day at lunchtime, my dad and his new girlfriend ordered from the food truck, arm in arm. Mom started dating a friendly hippie guy who rode his 10-speed bike long distances on the deserted highways outside of town. He had a fireplace in the middle of his living room. A rock fountain trickled water down one of the walls, and a killer reel-to-reel stereo played classical orchestra music while he tinkered with his bike's spokes. He was nice enough. Granola to the core, definitely high. While my parents explored these new relationships and lives apart from one another, I languished, stranded in the middle. A Cold War ensued, one that would last for decades. Mom and Dad refused to speak to one another. Ann and I were tasked with delivering their messages, nervous emissaries scurrying correspondence between two superpowers on the brink of Armageddon. Holiday plans were made while yelling from the landline. "Hey, Dad? Mom is asking if we have plans for Christmas Eve, or can I go to church with her?" "That's fine, but I want you and your sister here by 11. "Okay, Mom, so Dad says that's fine as long as..." When they traded me and Ann back and forth, it was always on neutral ground, a hostage exchange, each side wary and suspicious of the other, ready to open fire at a moment's notice. We would meet up at a public park. They'd stand menacingly 100 yards apart and send my sister and me walking resolutely across no man's land to the other side, the tension rising with every step. Our parents loved us both very much. They never wanted to hurt us, but they definitely wanted to hurt each other. And children are a handy cudgel. Anne was young and processed the stalemate between our parents with blind fury. She threw the gnarliest temper tantrums any kid has ever thrown. Give me your angriest, hungriest, most nap-needing children who just had their birthday parties canceled, and I'll put my 4-year-old sister up against every single one of them. On a routine drive to the dentist, she threw a fit so dramatic she opened the car door and threw herself howling out into traffic. She did that more than once. Fled the car at a stoplight, only to get chased down by a parent or grandparent who had to drag a feral child back to the car while concerned citizens watched on. She was just a confused little girl, scared by everything happening around her, and didn't know how else to react. I didn't blame her. I was confused too. Everything was beyond our understanding and out of our control, and it was changing our lives drastically and forever. I knew the problems between my parents weren't my fault, but I thought I could fix them. Whenever anything needed to be communicated between Mom and Dad, I did it. I wanted to do it. I volunteered to be the mediator. If I could be part of a ceasefire, I could help guide it, right? Get in there and slowly nudge them back to one another. This isn't too far gone. I can still help them find their happily ever after. They're just mad at each other. It's what I did for the entirety of my parents' divorce. I became a lifelong peacemaker. I'm always the guy in the middle, the guy who wants to keep the mood positive. I like creating things that make people happy. I don't like chaos. But with that desire to please people comes the fear of letting them down. I am constantly worried about being the source of friction. I want everyone to get along. I never want to put my own needs forward in case they upset a precarious balance. This dynamic is what made me the person I am. It gave me the good parts of my personality as well as the darker parts. It gave me compassion and patience. It also gave me anxiety, hypervigilance, and the constant need for reassurance that everything is okay. Is everything okay? Really? I could probably end the book right here. Everything you need to know about me is in those last paragraphs. You can still save yourself. Put down the book and walk away. There's nothing more honest I can say. You didn't. I warned you. 4. Mom's job didn't pay enough to cover the mortgage, so we moved into cheap government housing on base. When Dad stopped paying for everything, Mom had to start from scratch. Even as a kid, I understood that we were poor. Everything we ate came from cans. Canned peas, canned pears, canned soup. Our kitchen table was an empty wooden phone line spool rested on its side. We had a tiny TV in the kitchen and watched glitchy episodes of Mork and Mindy while we ate. Our worlds had collapsed, but we were together. Mom was doing her best. We were sad, but we were happy sad. She bought the absolute shittiest beater of a car in the entire state of California. A Dodge, maybe? No one knew. Any identifying emblems or logos had long since fallen off or faded away. The exterior was spray-painted primer gray, and the metal itself flaked off as it rattled through town. The floorboards rusted away so badly I could see the street racing underneath us. The passenger door never fully closed right, and sometimes when she turned left, it would fly wide open, leaving the panicked passenger to flail about for anything to hold on to. We fell out a lot. In stark contrast to the bike-riding hippie, my mom started dating a new guy called Absolute Fucking Asshole, and I didn't like him. I don't remember how exactly he came into the picture, but I was leery of him from the beginning. Short, thick, sweaty. He didn't like kids very much, or at least not me. He was thorny and sharp and barely acknowledged my existence. I was an inconvenience, a wart. Mom acted differently when he was around. I was shocked when she told us we were moving in with him. We spent half a year in his house. Every day felt like the flip of a coin. We'd be laughing, playing hide and seek, and he'd come home. The weather instantly changed. Dark clouds rolled in. Everything got very serious very fast. One November evening, we were all in the living room watching TV. Absolute Fucking Asshole had been watching football all day, and I asked if we could turn the channel to watch a Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. No. Please? I said no. Please? Mom came to my defense. Oh, come on. Let him watch Snoopy. It's only an hour, and then we can go back to the games. He leaned in close. "No," he said again, in a pointed, sharp way that really meant, "Fuck you and your shitty brats." She persisted. He raised his voice, she raised hers. The argument moved to their bedroom, and they closed the door. Jesus Christ, not this again. Here I was, back to sitting outside the bedroom door as adult voices gained in intensity. But this was different. It escalated faster and sounded angrier and more fearful. All of a sudden, the door flew open, and my mom tried running out, but absolute fucking asshole grabbed her by the neck and shoved her forward. He slammed her against the wall in the hallway and into the corner outside my room. He pushed her hard, violently. I remember watching her feet lift off the ground as he choked her. His face was red and twisted, even redder and more twisted than usual. He screamed in her face, spit flying while slamming her from wall to wall. Back, slam, and forth, slam. I stood helplessly in the hallway and yelled at him to stop, to let her down. He was so overcome with rage, I doubt he heard me. Finally, he let go. Mom collapsed to the floor, gasping and crying. He stormed back into the bedroom and slammed the door behind him like a troll under a bridge. When my mom found strength to stand, she staggered to the kitchen, grabbed her purse, woke up Anne, and rushed us both to her shitty car in the driveway. Thank God we're finally out of here. She jammed the key in the ignition, gunned the engine, slammed the car in reverse, looked over her shoulder, and sat there. And sat there. Mom, what's going on? What are you doing? Mom, he's going to come out the door any second and get us. Mom, let's go. But Mom just sat there in the long, silent dark. 10 seconds passed where none of us said anything. Anne and I looked at each other, afraid. Mom sighed and turned off the engine. She crossed her arms on the steering wheel, rested her head on them, and wept. We had nowhere to go. If we left that night, we would never be allowed back inside to get our stuff. And we couldn't afford new stuff. We had to go back. Absolute fucking asshole groveled at her feet when we returned. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I did that. It will never happen again. Please forgive me. I love you. The two of them went back to their bedroom. I hid in the darkness of my room, wide awake for hours, scared the door would barge open with blinding light and he'd come raging in. I tried to calm myself listening to Christopher Cross's Sailing, lost in the bizarre juxtaposition of domestic abuse and 70s yacht rock. Just a dream in the wind to carry me. Soon I will be free. I ran through the cassette player's batteries watching the door. I thought we were doomed to live in this asshole's house forever. When my mom got to work the next morning, her boss gasped when she saw the bruises running from her chin down to her chest. Eyes down, my mom explained. Her boss marched straight to the loading dock and gathered up a few burly dudes to accompany my mom to the house and move our things out. By the time absolute fucking asshole came home for lunch, the house was empty and we were gone. 5. Fortunately, the next guy my mom dated was the complete opposite. Glenn was a kind and patient naval officer who worked at the airfield on base. He treated me and Anne like his own children from day one, which was no easy task since I was still emotionally distant and Anne was still a walking landmine. I liked Glenn a lot, but the closer he and my mother got, the less likely it seemed that my parents' separation would move past the trial stage. One day, Mom and Glenn took us to Disneyland. We rode rides and drank Coke and laughed while eating popcorn. For a few blissful hours, we left the tension and anxiety back home. I smiled, and Anne didn't throw a single fit. We looked like a normal, happy family, like the one in the Disneyland commercial. After nightfall, Glenn took Anne to a gift shop, and Mom brought me on the motorboat cruise. That's where she told me that she and my dad were done. The decision had been made. It was final. It was divorce. I sat in our little boat as it went along its track. Mom continued talking, but I didn't hear her. The world kept going, but I was far away. Disneyland was no longer the happiest place on earth. The motorboat cruise isn't there anymore. It's been paved over and is now the smoking section between the Matterhorn and It's a Small World. But I remember it every time I walk past and look the other way. Not long after the D word entered our daily lives, Mom called us into my sister's room. It seemed serious. She and our dad had talked, and Anne and I needed to choose which parent we wanted to live with. It was up to us. Whatever we decided was fine with them, and they would love us no matter what, but we had to choose. Anne answered immediately, I'm staying with you. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to say, I want to go home, and right now, Mom feels like home. But for some reason, I didn't. I couldn't. It felt unfair to my dad. I'll go with Dad, I shrugged. I punished my dad for that choice for years. I blamed him for the divorce. I blamed him for my loneliness. I blamed him for everything. I wished I'd gone with Mom, but living with Dad turned out to be okay. I was the definition of a latchkey kid. I woke myself up every morning, made myself breakfast, packed my lunch, rode my bike to school, and returned to an empty house where I did my homework, watched Nickelodeon, and made dinner. I had countless hours to figure out how to entertain myself. Mostly I ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and played video games and watched You Can't Do That on television. Dad's job moved us around a lot. When I was in 5th grade, we spent a year 5 hours north in Monterey, California. After growing up in the desert, living near the beach was a new experience. But it wasn't the California beach you'd see on Baywatch. Monterey beaches are cold, foggy, and gray. They matched my mood. I felt shipwrecked, far from everything I knew, on the edge of the world. Between switching parents and cities, I was enrolled in a different school every year. By the time I got to high school, I'd lived in 8 different houses. Nowhere truly felt like home. I learned to live small and keep myself emotionally protected and a bit distant. Any day, the whole thing could change, and I'd be headed someplace new. Dad dated various women. Looking back, he dated a lot of women. Always very kind and respectful, he introduced me to them, and they'd be off for the night. I stayed home and put myself to bed. Sometimes they came back, sometimes not. A few weeks later, there'd be a new woman. When we moved back to Ridgecrest, an angry lover of his showed up one night and drunkenly pounded on the front door, demanding to be let in. She pounded so hard she broke the glass windows my dad had installed when we first moved into the house as a happy family. He came out and calmed her down. They talked for a bit, and then he took her home. She bought me a dog as an apology. A dog? It was weird. Times with my dad got easier. We sang songs in the car again. Billy Idol, Cyndi Lauper, and Lionel Richie. We took weekend trips to Death Valley, the Sierra Nevadas, and all up and down the California coast. He took me to Chuck E. Cheese, where I could play all the new video games, Frogger, Dig Dug, and Centipede. We got cable TV and spent Saturday nights laughing at comedy specials. Gallagher, Billy Crystal, and Robin Williams. Dad was gone a lot for work, sometimes days or weeks at a time. But when he was home, he was Dad. He was never a bad parent, just a person trying to figure out his life. We both were. I started feeling like myself again in junior high. Ridgecrest's first movie theater opened, and my friend Jeff and I spent every weekend there. At that time, motion picture soundtracks were almost as important as the movies themselves. We didn't have a local radio station, so watching movies in that theater was really the only exposure I had to new music. My taste sharpened as I saw Manhunter, Risky Business, Purple Rain, the John Hughes movies, and countless other films with killer music. Edgier, darker songs spoke to me. I was drawn to bands like Echo and the Bunnymen, Simple Minds, and the Psychedelic Furs. I emerged from my depressed shell and became the class clown. I'd watched Eddie Murphy's Delirious and Beverly Hills Cop way too many times and wanted to be as brash and outspoken. My teachers no longer complained that I was withdrawn. They complained I was too loud and distracting. I had a sarcastic little comment for everything. I was terrific. After pushing my luck one too many times, a teacher snapped and called me into the hall. "I've seen plenty of kids just like you over the years, Mr. Hoppus," she scolded. "If you don't fix that smart mouth of yours, you'll never amount to anything." Never amount to anything? It was just like in the movies. I was vindicated. If my finely honed sense of humor was getting under the school administration's skin, I was definitely on the right track. Before I started 8th grade, my dad let me pick out whatever clothes I wanted for the first day of school. I could finally choose my own identity. So I chose to dress like the coolest guy in the fucking world. And who was the coolest guy in the fucking world circa 1985? That's right, Miami Vice's Don Johnson. I went all in. Choose my own clothes? How about a baggy pastel sports coat with padded shoulders, a pink pastel t-shirt, a pair of baggy linen pants with the cuffs rolled up, and I don't know, top it all off with a pair of deck shoes? No socks? Perfect. When I pulled up to school that morning, I was truly the coolest fucking kid in Ridgecrest. It was the first day of a new chapter in my young life, One where I was going to be a trendsetter, an influencer, and dare I say, a heartthrob. Finally, my time had come. That feeling lasted about 60 seconds. My friends caught me exiting my dad's truck and burst out laughing. Holy shit! Who are you supposed to be? Detective fucking Crockett? What the fuck are you wearing? Damn. I tried too hard. A bridge too far. I'd been a fool. I deserved the ridicule. Nothing left but to accept my fate, own up to my own hubris, and face the music. I took a deep breath. I know, right? My grandma bought these and made me wear them. Sorry, Nana, but I had to throw you to the wolves. When my friends weren't looking, I untucked my t-shirt, uncuffed my pant legs, and stuffed the sports coat into my locker. And that was the end of that. 6. Then came skateboarding. One day, an issue of Thrasher appeared on a cafeteria table at school. No one knew how it got there. The half-pipe heavens opened up and dropped it. It drew a bunch of us in like a tractor beam. We crowded around to look, staring in awe at the photos of skaters jumping over curbs, sliding along the edges of pools, and flipping their boards underneath them. The rebellious culture, the technical challenge, the underground aesthetic. Not only was I hooked, I suddenly found myself with a new group of skater friends who were hooked as well. We all got boards. My pride and joy was a Steve Caballero Dragon deck with independent trucks and OJ2 wheels. I spent an entire night carefully cutting the grip tape and applying it in a tiger stripe pattern. We built launch ramps and skated every parking lot in town. We were dedicated and relentless in our pursuit of skate greatness. And greatness is what we found. We were destined to become the next Bones Brigade. Okay, maybe I'm overselling it a bit. The truth is, we were a bunch of lanky kids falling awkwardly on curbs in the middle of nowhere. But for the first time, I felt fucking cool, like I had a crew, like I belonged. Skateboarding was more than a hobby for me. It was a portal to another world. Living in the desert, we had no exposure to alternative culture, but every now and then someone would show up at school with an issue of Thrasher or Trans World, and we'd all rush over to tear through it like letters from the resistance. New photos of skaters caught mid-trick, new products from new companies, new clothes, new music. We started emulating the styles of these skate gods captured on its pages. Christian Hosoi, Rodney Mullen, Tony Hawk. My fashion style evolved from "can you believe this get-up my grandma bought me?" to skate and surf brands, Vans, Vision, Pal Peralta, Jimmy's. Dayglow colors, waves, skulls. I started spiking up the front of my hair. I hated competitive sports. Any sport whose objective is overpowering someone else, pushing them down, raising yourself above a defeated foe, wasn't for me. But skateboarding is internal, more zen. It's about getting a little better every day. You fall, you get up, you try again and again until you master a skill, and then you try something harder. And you fail at that, and you try again. I once heard that the Japanese approach to life is you work every day toward perfection, knowing you'll never reach it, but always moving closer. To me, that's skateboarding. It's art. Abstract expressionism on concrete. Also, skaters are allowed to drink and smoke. In 10th grade, my dad's work called us away again, this time to Virginia, where he commuted every day to the Pentagon. The night before we left Ridgecrest, my friend Wendy gave me The Cure's "Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me" on cassette as a parting gift. It sounded like the world opening up. Most of the music was dark and weird, yet the band could pull off a track like "Just Like Heaven," which is a perfectly crafted pop song. One afternoon I was doing homework, MTV playing in the background. When the song's video came on, I leapt over the couch to record it on VHS. I rewatched that tape constantly and studied every second of it. The band members dressed in black and played their instruments among dead and barren trees. At night, at the edge of a cliff. Most Cure fans were drawn to frontman Robert Smith, the center of attention with his smeared, pale makeup, red lipstick, and wild black hair. But I was more fascinated by their bassist, Simon Gallup. He was more aloof, like he was too cool to be there. He slung his bass low across his body, and he faded into the background. But he was there, and I couldn't look away. He hardly got any screen time because he never bothered looking at the camera, staring at the floor like his mind was somewhere else entirely. The way he looked was cool, But what he was doing was cooler. I liked his bass guitar. I liked what the bass did. It launched the song's melody and then stepped back into the music. The guitars and vocals swirled around, lifting and falling. Melodies ducked in and out, weaving the song together. But the bass was constant, solid, holding it down while also pushing the song forward. Something in my mind clicked. I started dressing like The Cure. Black hair dye, black Doc Marten boots, black clothes. Around my new school, Annandale High, I was the goth skate kid from Southern California. I fell in with a group of equally disaffected friends. The girls wore too much black eyeliner, and the boys sulked a lot. Adults shook their head at us as they passed us in the mall. But really, what else was there for teenagers to do in 1989 other than hang out at the mall and try very hard to seem like you don't care? My grades, which until this point had been immaculate, began to buckle as I tore into my rebellious era. We went to our school's football games and sneered, "Fucking jocks." We smoked bad weed that we got from a friend who knew a guy. We talked someone's older brother into buying us alcohol and hid cases of beer in the forest. I kept a bottle of rum stashed underneath my mattress and drank from it at night while reading graphic novels. On weekends, we trekked to D.C. to scour alternative record stores for music we hadn't heard yet, a Susie and the Banshees import single or a new REM release. I bought every Cure album I could find. For my 16th birthday, I went to my first concert, They Might Be Giants, at the old 930 Club. It was dark and dreary, and there wasn't much signage to indicate that a rock club even existed on the other side of the wall. We timidly approached, presented our tickets, and scurried through the door. Everyone inside looked so damn cool. Broods of vampires huddled around dimly lit tables, smoking cigarettes and having deep conversations about what I assumed must be philosophy, art, and all kinds of smart adult shit. My friends and I decided we should probably start smoking as well. We gathered together in front of the cigarette machine, arguing over which brand to buy. Which brand spoke to us, teenagers at their first concert? Camels? Nah, none of us rode a motorcycle. Marlboro Reds? Leave those for the cowboys. We settled on a box of Marlboro Menthols, which we proceeded to cough and gag our way through. I smoked all night, and that night quickly turned into 10 years. Eventually the house music stopped, the room darkened, and the show began. The members walked out, picked up their instruments, and started banging away. Spotty lights, uneven sound, tiny stage. Most of the crowd coagulated into small scabs of people toward the back of the dance floor, but my friends and I rushed eagerly to the front. Holy shit, there they were. They Might Be Giants, mere inches from me, playing music. Such a simple thing, but so enormous I could hardly comprehend it. Long ago, in a Brooklyn apartment far, far away, two guys got together and wrote some songs. They went to a studio and recorded those songs, and a label put them onto albums and shipped them to stores. I went to the store and bought the album, and now here I am. Here everyone is, listening to them play those songs. Just for us. And it's only right now, right this second. Soon the moment will be over and done forever. Everyone will go home, and the band will move on to the next city. But right now, we're here, and it's happening. Hanging on every note, I also had so many questions. Where were they before walking on stage? Who set up their amps and instruments? What does a band do after a show? Do you think they drink beer? Why is this tall dude standing in front of me when I'm clearly already standing right here? I went home a changed man, or at least a changed teenager. Music overtook my life. I listened to it before school, talked about it with my friends all day, had it playing while I did my homework and when I went to bed. I wrote lyrics in the margins of textbooks and on desks. I couldn't stop. I analyzed every word, considered the different instruments and what they did, the tone of a singer's voice, and read all the liner notes. I sat on the edge of my bed and tried to play drums on my knees. I wanted to know everything about my favorite bands and craved new and different music. We had to work hard for that knowledge back then. We scoured magazines imported from London or fanzines written by local writers and left on record shop floors. Combing through the zine pages and liner notes was fine, but I wanted more. I wanted to be in the room where music was being made, creating, writing, singing. I didn't know how, but I wanted to be part of it. I started a band called I Like Eggs with a few friends. The name was taken from a Billy Crystal comedy album I'd memorized. The only problem was that none of us played any instruments. We never practiced because we had nothing to practice. All we did was design handmade posters with our band's name on them that we could hang around all over school. But you can only go so long telling everyone you're in a band without actually playing music. So I got a Casio keyboard and taught myself some Cure songs. The keyboard was fine. The problem with a keyboard is that you just stand there pushing buttons. I didn't love that. I wanted something more immediate and visceral. I begged my dad to buy me a bass. After a great deal of pleading, eye-rolling, and cajoling, he said he would, as long as I painted his girlfriend's house. Abso-fucking-lutely. I spent several miserable DC summer days with a paint roller and edging brush, learning on a very deep and personal level why goths hate the sun. But it was all worth it when we went to the local music store, where Dad bought me a shitty Mako bass. All black with black headstock. Fuck yes. Excalibur in my hands. It was the bass of the gods, and it belonged to me. This was all I needed. Well, that and this remote control, and this lamp. One problem, I had no clue how to play bass guitar, or tune it, or replace the strings, or use a pick. This might be harder than I thought. Dad offered to pay for lessons, but I refused. No way some fucking music nerd was going to teach me how to rock. Instead, I sat in my room and taught myself, slowly copying the songs I loved, trial and error along the fretboard until I found the right notes. Gradually, I taught myself the notes, and then the rhythms. Week by week, month by month, I got a little better, and then a little better still. And eventually, I was playing along with my favorite bands. See? I didn't need any fucking lessons. I should have taken the lessons. Decades later, I still have terrible technique. I'm a solid bassist and proud of where it's taken me, but I'll never be one of those musicians who wears it up underneath their chin and runs scales all over the place. I guess I never wanted to be a bassist. I wanted to be a dude in a band, my friends and I against the world, like a Ramone. Immediately after I got my Mako, Dad's job relocated us back to Ridgecrest. We packed up our life in Virginia, and I said goodbye to my fellow goths and returned to the desert. I fell back in with old friends and made some new ones. We were the contemptible outcasts of the high school, and we cherished the role. I started wearing black eyeliner and red lipstick and spiking my hair in every direction. I got called homophobic slurs by jocks every single day and wore them like a badge of honor. That's fucking right, man. You don't get me and you never will. Good riddance and fuck you too. I got my first real girlfriend in 10th grade. Her name was Heather, a fellow desert goth a grade below me who liked a lot of the same music. Her mom absolutely hated me, but what do you expect when your daughter brings home a guy in black clothes, black eyeliner, and hair fucked up all over the place? The first time I met her mom, I did my best to be polite and gracious. Hello, it's very nice to meet you. Heather and I are going to meet up with some friends for dinner and then go to a movie. She looked up from Wheel of Fortune and shook her head. Be home by 10. Heather was the kind of girl who drew the dead Kennedy's logo on her shoes. We ditched formal dances to drink at parties, spent weekends at Disneyland, made out in a shed in our friend's backyard. We punched our V-cards at another friend's apartment while Bauhaus played in the background. One day, she stayed home sick, and I ditched school to see her. We were interrupted mid-hookup by the sound of the front door opening. Panicked, I jumped out of bed and hid in her tiny walk-in closet that had no door. Her mom walked into the room and turned toward Heather to see if her cold was any better. There I stood, 3 feet behind her, naked, eyes wide, barely breathing, fully erect. Heather and her mom talked for the next 2 hours, but it was probably only 30 seconds. Not long after we started dating, Heather gave me a cassette that changed my entire life again. Descendants, I Don't Want to Grow Up. It was everything I loved about music. Catchy hooks and melodies that stuck in your head for days, but played way faster and sharp with angst. The Beach Boys on cocaine. The punk rock I'd heard before was all angry screeds about burning down the government or war or Ronald Reagan. But Descendants songs weren't like that. They were about heartbreak and girls and the monotony of suburbia. I loved the specificity of their songs. They'd sing about real places where they hung out, Wiener Schnitzel, or the local Mexican spot where they ate burritos. The Cure's lyrics were great, but they were ambiguous. God knows what the hell Robert Smith was singing about most of the time, other than love and death. But Descendants frontman Milo Ackerman was direct. It felt more relatable to a high school kid who hadn't seen much of the world. I went to our local record store and showed the cashier my Descendants cassette and asked if they had anything else like it. He handed me Social Distortion's Prison Bound and Sonic Youth's Daydream Nation. As the high school years passed, my interest in punk rock exploded after discovering bands like Bad Religion, Dinosaur Jr., and Adolescence. Punk was all I wanted. Hey ho, let's go. 7. If my grades had been buckling before, they completely collapsed my senior year. My teachers regularly sent home notes citing unsatisfactory scores and frequent absences. What was I cutting class to do? Nothing really. My friends and I ditched school all the time but had nowhere to go, so we'd sit on the lawns of nearby houses, listen to music, and smoke cigarettes. Through friends, I met 2 fellow delinquents, Josh and Jeremy, who went to the other high school in town, the one where they sent the bad kids, Mesquite Continuation High School. We snuck out at night and Josh stole his mom's car, picked everyone up, and we drove aimlessly down dirt roads. One time, we found an abandoned mattress, set it on fire, and just watched a mattress burn. Another time, we drove out to the surrounding mountains to camp, which meant just lying in the dirt around a campfire. Someone threw a handful of .22 rounds into the fire, and we all scattered and hid behind boulders as the shots fired in every direction, cautiously returning after they'd all gone off. Hours later, I was stretching by the fire when one remaining round went off, shooting its casing directly toward my elbow and blowing a hole through the arm of my sweatshirt. To pay for cigarettes and gas, I got a job at the coolest restaurant in town, John's Pizza, a combination pizzeria and ice cream counter. Starting at the bottom, I made pizzas and scooped cones. When no one was looking, I ducked behind the counter to take nitrous oxide hits from the whipped cream containers. Customers stepped up to an empty register, only for me to rise slowly like the creature from the Black Lagoon. We drove down to Los Angeles to catch shows every chance we got. Always first in line, always pressed up against the barricade, always singing along at the top of our lungs. I caught elbows in the pit and took the occasional crowd surfer's Doc Martin to the head like proud battle scars. We saw Nine Inch Nails just after Head Like a Hole came out, in a tiny 400-person capacity room with no barricade. Just a stage 2 feet off the floor. As soon as the band began, the crowd surged forward and launched me on stage, where I sat at Trent Reznor's feet for the rest of the show. Another night, at a Sonic Youth concert, a new band called Nirvana opened. They crushed and told people to check out their new album, Bleach, which I went out and bought the following morning. The next time I saw them, they had a new drummer. Eventually, my friends and I got the idea to form a band of our own. We started playing together in our garages, mostly learning covers of songs by Social Distortion, The Cure, and Jimi Hendrix. We practiced a lot because there was nothing else to do. Josh played guitar, Jeremy on drums, me on bass. I took to the role immediately. It turned out, being a bass player was the perfect instrument for a mediator like me. As a bassist, it was my job to bridge the space between the rhythm of the drums and the melody of the guitar and vocals. I took what everyone was doing and helped them meet somewhere in the middle, laying the foundation that glued the song together. We called ourselves the Pure 69. I thought it sounded mysterious, and it also had the sex number in it. We thought we were so clever. Eventually, our friend who occasionally played keyboard quit the band, so the Pure 69 became Of All Things. Of all things, because Jeremy's mom always yelled at him beginning with that phrase, "Oh, Jeremy, of all things, leaving your dishes all over the house? Get in here and clean this up." Every weekend there was a new party at a different clearing in the desert outside of town, and every secret meeting point had its own secret location name. Word traveled through school on Fridays. Tomorrow, 9 p.m., Wagon Wheel, or The Wash, or Roundhouse, or my personal favorite, The Fuck Rocks. Dozens of cars and pickups would meet at the end of dirt roads, converging in the dark. Someone would get a bonfire going, and in the glow of headlights and the smoke from the blaze, all the kids from the local high schools milled around, drinking and smoking. These parties were social equalizers. No matter which clique you traveled with at school, at these gatherings, all were welcome. The dude who wanted to fight you at lunch because you listened to heavy metal and he liked country would be the one handing you a beer. Girls who completely ignored one another in class chatted over a joint. Having said that, there was always at least one fist fight and a tearful breakup that ended with the girl being consoled by her friends while the guy shotgunned a can of Bud Light. It was fucked up and glorious. Whenever we heard about the parties, we asked if Of All Things could play. We'd set up our gear in someone's living room or backyard and wait until the party was in full swing. Then we'd pick up our instruments like we were the most important people there and bash through 5 or 6 covers. Mosh pits broke out, and I loved every second of the spotlight, the attention that came with being in a band. It even started earning me social points. Around school, people who'd just recently been throwing insults at me in the halls started giving me the "what's up" nod. That was new. Somewhere in there, I barely graduated high school, though I was more excited about playing the graduation after party than receiving my diploma. We spent the summer after high school practicing in the garage, exploring mine shafts, and jumping off the second-story roof of our friend's house into their pool. We called it cliff diving. One by one, my smarter friends packed up and headed off to 4-year universities. They couldn't wait to get out of the desert. I had no idea what I was doing with my life, and didn't really care. High school came and went. I had an entirely adequate job at the pizza place. My band played parties, and had even played a local nightclub a couple times. I enrolled in the local community college for no other reason than that's what you're supposed to do after high school, right? One night, our band got asked to play at someone's house, far out of town in the desert. We set up our gear, had a couple of drinks, smoked a joint, and picked up our instruments to begin. Jeremy counted us in. 1, 2, 3, 4. And as soon as I hit the first note of the song, I realized something was very wrong. I looked down at my bass, and it doubled and then quadrupled in size in my hands, then stretched out to infinity. I panicked, dropped my bass in the dirt, and took off running into the night. I ran several hundred yards until I made it to the road. A car pulled up at that moment, and it happened to be my girlfriend arriving to the party. I jumped into her car and said, "I need to leave. Just drive." "What the hell is going on?" she asked. "What's wrong?" "I don't know. Something is off. It feels like I'm fighting gravity. I might be dying." I kept looking at my hands and shaking my head. This makes no sense. This makes no sense. This makes no sense. She nodded knowingly. "Mark, someone slipped you acid." I was too scared to go home, so we spent the night driving around while she calmed me down. We hit the Del Taco drive-thru, and I watched the brake lights of the car ahead of us dissolve into giant red dragon eyes. 8. When I turned 20, my dad told me to get the fuck out of his house. He didn't say it exactly like that. He put it more kindly. "Mark, it's time for you to grow up and start your life. You need to learn how to be on your own and live like an adult. Spread your wings. This will be a difficult adjustment at first, but it'll be good for you in the long run." What he meant was, get the fuck out of my house. He even took my key to the front door. He was right. He'd gotten remarried and was beginning his life with his new wife. I was the third wheel. For the last 2 years, I'd just been sort of drifting. I was taking bullshit classes at the community college, turning in papers for my poli-sci classes that were largely lifted from Bad Religion lyrics. I enjoyed my art classes and made horrible derivative paintings, but I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I mostly spent my days skateboarding or practicing with my band and working nights at John's Pizza, where I'd been promoted to the coveted position of waiter. It had been an aimless 2 years. An aimless 6 years, if I'm being honest. After Dad told me I needed to get out, I figured I should apply to more reputable 4-year colleges. I put in applications to San Diego State, UC San Diego, and a few other California schools. I knew they were long shots. I had no grades or extracurriculars to speak of. I'd barely even squeaked through high school. I'd been on autopilot for so long, I wasn't exactly a desirable candidate. To my surprise, though, Cal State San Marcos sent me a letter one day saying I'd been accepted. This seemed like the ideal situation since it was in San Diego, where my mom now lived with Ann and Glenn. They'd been transferred yet again, and I could just move in with them while I went to school. Easy. In early August 1992, I loaded my bass and some trash bags full of clothes into my beat-up Nissan Stanza, hugged my dad and stepmom goodbye, and headed south. I had a lot of time to think on the 4-hour drive down Route 395, and a question kept repeating in my head. What the fuck am I doing? I was moving to a new city where I didn't know anybody. I was enrolling in college even though I had no career plan. I had no real job experience and no money. I was just a desert kid about to enter a real college in a real city that had more than one McDonald's. I couldn't run back to the life I'd known. I didn't even have a key. I certainly wasn't ready for what lay ahead. I hadn't reached any conclusions by the time I arrived. I didn't even have plans for what to do with myself that day, let alone the rest of my life. Unpacking my stuff was as far ahead as I'd thought. Anne had a whole network of people in San Diego. She had friends and a boyfriend, Carrie, but I had nothing. Even before I got there, I complained to her about leaving my garage band behind. I liked playing music with people and wanted to keep doing it, but didn't know how to start a new band in a new town. How does that even work? I asked. What am I supposed to do? Just look in the newspaper? Hang a flyer in a record store window? Middling bassist seeks punk partners? You should meet Carrie's friend. He skates and plays guitar, she said. All he's been talking about lately is putting together a band. Maybe you two would hit it off. That night, Ann and I drove through a sprawl of suburban tract homes, dozens of beige little boxes in neatly arranged rows, occasionally broken up by a strip mall or a multiplex theater or chain restaurant. We pulled up to a house that was the same as any other on the block and rang the bell. This tall, lanky kid answered. He had a pimply face and skater bangs. He wore a plain white t-shirt, torn-up skate sneakers, and baggy jeans with a wallet chain. Hi, I'm Tom. Tom's house was in a state of turmoil as his parents' marriage imploded. To escape the constant fighting and arguments, he'd relocated his bedroom to the garage. Among the storage boxes and washing machine was his bed, a nightstand, and one chair. We sat in his garage and talked, and Tom could really talk. He was outgoing and funny. He was 3 years younger than me, but we had the same sense of humor. We immediately connected over bands and movies we loved. Within a few minutes, we were finishing each other's jokes and laughing, until Ann felt left out. Like me, Tom loved Descendants and Bad Religion, but was also into some bands I didn't know. He liked East Coast punk rock, as well as bands from the UK, like Stiff Little Fingers and Toy Dolls. He told me he'd played in a band called Big Oily Men, but that was done. At his high school's Battle of the Bands, Tom got up in front of an auditorium full of students and faculty and played a song he'd written, called Who's Gonna Shave Your Back Tonight? After a while, we picked up our instruments. Tom was also a self-taught musician, but was growing into a very skilled guitarist. It was obvious he'd spent a lot of time practicing. He asked if I had any song ideas we could start with. I do have this one thing, I told him. I was trying to learn to play Fur Elise, but my fingers were in the wrong position, and I thought it sounded kind of cool. It goes like this. I played him my accidental bass line, while he noodled around on his guitar, searching for an idea. Then his face lit up. Wait, this might fit with something I've been working on, he said. He put this lightning-fast guitar riff over my arpeggiated bass line, and we looked at each other like, holy shit. It sounded imperfect, but we were imperfect together. Separately, our two different melodies sounded incomplete, but when they weaved in and out of one another, they created something real, something cool. It felt intentional. That's fucking rad, I said. These mesh together perfectly. We kept trading ideas back and forth, and it snowballed from there. Tom tried some vocal melodies. He had a snotty, nasally voice, and I backed him up in the choruses. After a few hours, we'd put together 3 minutes of music and figured that counted as a song. It was fast and sloppy, but we were proud of our creation and called it Carousel. We sat on the curb of his cul-de-sac afterwards while I smoked a celebratory cigarette. I couldn't stop looking at the streetlight in front of the house next door. Its glow hit the misty air, creating a cloud of orange haze. I breathed in and realized that being so close to the ocean made the air in San Diego much damper than what I was used to in the desert. You know, I said, pointing at the streetlight in between drags, I bet I could climb that fucking thing. The next thing I knew, I was 10 feet up the pole, and I'm not sure why. Maybe it was a skateboarder's tendency to scale everything in sight, or maybe I was just trying to impress my new friend. I felt the moisture on the pole start to soak through my shirt as I climbed higher and higher. After a few seconds, I made it to the top. I knew I could do it! But when I started easing myself back down, I made a mistake. I let go too early and dropped. I hit the ground hard, and both of my ankles screamed in pain. I tried to walk it off like it was no big deal, but they really hurt. The next morning, my heels were purple and swollen. I got x-rays at the Naval Hospital. They weren't broken, but they were so badly bruised that I needed crutches to get around for the next 3 weeks. That was my first day in San Diego. I made a new friend, wrote a new song, and fucked up my heels. I couldn't stop thinking about the song we wrote in that garage, though. The melody played over and over in my head in the hospital waiting room. Carousel was just a short pop-punk song, but it felt like the start of something. It was happening. We were starting a real band. I was part of something. I no longer felt scared of my new city. All of the uncertainty and fear washed away that first night. I knew what I wanted to do now. I wanted to make more music with Tom. The next morning, Tom called me to see how my feet felt. Then he said, "So, You want to come over tonight and write more songs? I loved Tom from the first day I met him. 9. Over that first summer in San Diego, Tom and I became fast friends and bandmates. He had a whole social circle, a group of godless miscreant skate rats. These were my people. I fell right in. We spent those sweaty, carefree weeks terrorizing the unsuspecting residents of San Diego. We were young and stupid and unstoppable. Every morning we'd wake up and seek chaos. There was a rundown, abandoned hotel downtown called El Cortez, where we'd hop the fence and skate the empty pool. Or we'd break into schools and skate their stairs and benches. We broke in everywhere and skated everything. After dark, downtown San Diego was a wasteland of abandoned parking garages and offices, with miles of concrete to explore. The industrial parks of North County offered endless obstacles. If it had a curb, a lip, a ledge, a slope, a staircase, or a gap, we ollied, ground, or slid it. Security guards pursued us in their golf carts, like cartoon dog catchers. West Hawthorne is a long, steep street where we'd lie flat on our backs and luge downhill at full speed, blowing past several stop signs, launching onto the freeway entrance at the bottom. To brake, you had to jam the soles of your shoes into the pavement, which wore away the rubber like a belt sander. Some days, we'd wake up at 5 a.m. and drive to Big Bear to spend the morning snowboarding, then head back to the beach to body surf glass off as the sun set. Whenever we were at the beach, Tom and I had this prank we called flybys. He'd spot a couple taking a romantic stroll along the shore, point their way and say, "Go!" I got up and ran directly at them as fast as I could. I ran faster and faster, barreling closer and closer. As my sweaty, shirtless body charged toward them, their eyes filled with curiosity, then confusion, then outright panic. Right as we were about to collide, I'd blow past them by inches and run straight into the ocean like I'd never even seen them. Should have gotten my ass kicked? Never did. Never learned the lesson. We subsisted on a steady diet of candy and donuts and off-brand vending machine soda. We pantsed each other at the mall to try and embarrass each other. I figured out how to turn my windshield wiper fluid shooters to face forward, so when I was waiting at a red light, I could spray pedestrians in the crosswalk in front of me. We leaned out the window and yelled at other drivers for no reason whatsoever. Our friend Dan skated professionally and had his own place. We spent weekends there, wrestling, laughing, and howling at the moon until the neighbors yelled at us to keep it down. We apologized and kept right on yelling and playing Street Fighter. We filmed all our ridiculous skits and hijinks on High 8 and watched the footage back at night. Then we'd fall asleep at 4 a.m. watching Stripes or Fletch or Caddyshack or Spinal Tap or Evil Dead or any animated Disney movie we could find. Some nights, we stayed out so late skating that the sun came up and the donut shops opened. We'd barge in like a pack of hungry sailors on shore leave and annihilate a box of freshly baked goodness. We got kicked out of every parking lot in the county. We told every adult we encountered to fuck off. Overall, I'd say we were more shitheads than dicks, but I'm one of the shitheads in question, so my recollection may be biased. We were fearless, invincible, ascendant, immortal. Fuck you. To fund this summer of debauchery, I got a job working at a corporate music chain called The Warehouse. They sold records, CDs, and cassettes, and also rented VHS tapes. Everything from the latest blockbusters to the adult films hidden in the back corner. When hiring new employees, warehouse management made it very clear that all associates were expected to work Friday nights and weekends. No exceptions. I wanted to keep my weekends open for skating and playing music, so during my interview, I lied and said that I needed my weekends open for the time I spent volunteering with special needs kids. I'm sorry if that precludes me from this job, but my volunteer work really means a lot to me, and if it's a deal breaker, I'll unfortunately have to decline the position. Management appreciated my commitment to civic duty and offered me the job, weekends free. I was a great employee, except for when I wasn't. I treated the customers well, never complained about the endless alphabetizing and sorting, started early and worked late. But I also occasionally gorged on packs of Fun Dip from the shelves and spaced out watching movies on the store's TVs. When one of my buddies came in, I gave them the friend discount, filling their entire shopping bag with CDs, but only scanning one. Tom had a job too. Actually, Tom has had more jobs than anyone I know. He worked nights at a rotisserie chicken restaurant, and on the weekends he worked the front desk at a local swim and tennis club. He was also briefly employed at the mall's GNC, where he cut out a photo of a thong-sporting bodybuilder from one of the catalogs, taped a picture of his own head over it, and laminated the whole thing into a very official-looking ID card with the inscription, "This certifies that Tom DeLonge looks great naked." Tom was a middle-class hoodlum. He got kicked out of his previous high school for showing up to a football game drunk. He drove a giant green sedan with an old push-button desk phone on the seat next to him, pretending to take calls. He could really wreak havoc with a phone. He prank called Carrie's parents almost every night. At 2 a.m., the phone would ring, and Carrie's mom or dad would answer to the sound of Tom hanging up. Whenever Tom met a girl, he gave her Carrie's number and told her to call and ask for Bill, which incidentally was Carrie's dad's name. Then old Bill would catch hell from his wife for having girls call him at all hours. One of Tom's favorite recurring gags was to bring out the dummy. The dummy was a set of old clothes pinned together and filled with stuffing to look like a human body. He'd bring it under a streetlight at night and beat the shit out of it while concerned drivers zoomed by. Or he'd stand on overpasses and chuck it into the path of a vehicle below, or throw it from a moving car into oncoming traffic. But even though Tom might have seemed like your average suburban slacker, he was anything but lazy. When Tom wants something, he is relentless in his pursuit. He sees where he wants to be and simply starts walking toward it, confident in the knowledge that nothing can stop him. He puts in the work. He's a guy who makes things happen. He is his own biggest proponent and most ardent believer. He cannot be told no. It's both inspiring and infuriating. So when Tom and I needed a drummer, he found us one. Scott Rayner was a drummer that Tom had played with a few times. He was only 14, several years younger than both of us, but he really loved playing. Although he preferred metal, he liked drumming so much that he was fine playing punk rock if needed. He kept his drum kit in his bedroom and glued egg cartons to the walls to help dampen the noise. It didn't work, but his parents let us practice there anyway. We played carousel for him, and he took to it instantly. His metalhead inclinations led him to play a double kick, which injected even more frantic energy into our hyperactive song. The three of us wrote and practiced together as often as we could in his bedroom, and started amassing a small repertoire of original songs. Scott and I became bandmates and eventually friends, but it wasn't the same connection I felt with Tom. Tom and I hung out all the time, but I mostly just saw Scott at practice. Maybe it was the age difference, or maybe it was just our personalities. Tom and I were loud and obnoxious, but Scott was shy and stared at the ground when he walked. He didn't talk much, but when he did, you could tell he was smart and funny and could quote the kids in the hall. Even now, I struggle to adequately describe Scott. He seemed both content and lonely, like a kid who grew up with no attention paid to him, but also no unkindness pointed his way either. I don't know if Scott had ambitions or what they were. He just went with the flow. He rarely got angry or excited. Scott just cruised. Tom and I couldn't soak up enough attention in a room, while Scott sat quietly, hat pulled low, eyes down, somewhere else. Despite the differences, I loved riding with Scott and Tom. They each brought their own talents and ideas, and everything was fresh and exciting. Sometimes Tom or I would be so eager to show off something we'd written that we'd call each other up and try and play it over the phone. Tom would strum his acoustic guitar, and it came through my receiver 5 miles away like a wall of crunchy noise. "Could you hear that?" I couldn't really hear what your voice was doing, but the guitar sounded awesome." Then, once we all got together, we'd turn our idea fragments into actual songs. The collaboration became a friendly competition that brought out the best in all of us. It's what I love most about being in a band. Working together to create something new. Here's an idea. Now what? Sure, our songs were amateurish, but the good kind of amateurish. And our lyrics were juvenile, but they made us laugh. For example, Tom hated my smoking, so he wrote a song called Marlboro Man to dig at me. And at the end of the chorus, he sang, "My breath is how the streets get paved." It was such a ridiculous lyric, but it oddly made sense. Burn. We called ourselves Duct Tape, and then Figure Eight. Finally, Tom suggested Blink. He just liked the word. It was short, easy to remember, and evoked quick motion. Like our band, it was fast and to the point. It was easy to write on a wall, print on a flyer, or screen onto a t-shirt. I suggested we use a lowercase b because I thought it looked better. The Gothic spires of the B, L, and K, interrupted by the curves, dot, and short line segments of the other letters. Blink. Look at the word. It's beautiful and elegant. Graphically, it's perfectly weighted. It makes total sense. And at the time, this was all I needed out of Blink. I was perfectly happy writing songs among the egg cartons in Scott's room and maybe playing the occasional backyard party. But Tom had bigger plans.